What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Total Takedown. This is for UFC Vegas 105, and as you guys know, we take a different approach here on this show. We like to find ways to go over or under rather than picking a side, see if we can find another avenue to making some good money on these UFC fights. I'm going to take a look at a couple of my favorite totals for this week just to let you guys know where we might be able to spot a little bit of value. Do me a favor, please hit that like button, share the show out there if you haven't already, because I know you guys do, and make sure you're hitting those links in the description of this video, you guys. Of course, I need to shout out Bet Openly. Every single line that I give you on this show is going to be better and available at Bet Openly at a better price with just 1% juice, which is going to save you money long term as a gambler, so make sure you keep that in mind. The first total I want to talk to you about today, Reese Mckee and Daniel Frunza. Reese Mckee is a guy that's been going to decision in the UFC a lot. He tends to finish his fights outside the UFC very late. We're talking round 2, round 3. He's getting a step down in competition. We're not entirely sure what Daniel Frunza is made of at this level. However, what I can tell you is a guy like Reese Mckee has taken an absolute beating in his UFC career so far, and this is a back against the ropes type of spot. You got to think he's going to let it all fly. He's going to let it all hang out there. He's going to give his best effort. There's a chance that he puts himself in more danger than normal. There's a chance that there's some damage done to that chin, that legendary durability. It's just not going to hang around forever. And then there's also a chance that because he's getting a step down in competition against Daniel Frunza, he's going to have more success with his own offense. I like under here, you guys. We got a 2.5, under 2.5 minus 125. With it being that kind of a price tag, I would pay up for the doesn't go the distance. It should be about, minus 150 or something. You're paying a little bit to buy those extra 2.5 minutes at the end of this one, and I think that's perfectly fine in this circumstance. I'm okay with paying a little extra for this thing not to go the distance because I think Frunza can take Reese Mckee out very early in this fight. However, I think Reese Mckee is fully capable of taking Frunza out if this thing gets to round 2 or round 3, and we've seen that be what he wants to do in the past. So yeah, this one's got violence written all over it for me. The next fight we want to talk about is Diana Belbita and Diana Barbosa. 2.5 total for women's MMA. The under 2.5 is minus 130. And you guys know me. We've talked about how with these women's MMA totals, they are always chalked to the overs, minus 300, minus 400, that's going the distance every single time. When the bookies finally give you a, this one's a coin flip. Maybe it goes under, maybe it goes over. We're not entirely certain. That's because they recognize just how violent these women could possibly be. And I think the under is probably a good play in that circumstance. Just blindly clicking the button in that circumstance. In this case, we've got Diana Belbita, who's moving up a weight class and is doing her very best Kevin Holland impression, coming out here and telling people outright, yeah, I don't care. I don't care about this fight. She already retired. So she's done. She hung up the gloves, and now she's coming back for a paycheck up a weight class against somebody the UFC is trying to get going here. On top of that, Belbita's been submitted by like everybody, and she's been armbarred 4 out of 5 submissions. Diana Barbosa is an extremely offensive woman on the ground. She has a very solid submission game. She is very dangerous on the mat, and she's going to have a huge size and strength advantage here. She's going to bully Belbita around. So normally speaking, you guys, I just want somebody inside the distance. I would rather take somebody inside the distance than playing an under 2.5. But in this case, we're actually saving money because we've got Barbosa as a minus 175 inside the distance, yet the under 2.5 is just minus 130. If you want to tempt the MMA gods and you want to go ahead and take a shot at saving those last 2.5 minutes, it's going to save you 45 cents worth of value. I don't believe Diana Belbita has a chance to finish Diana Barbosa. But the price is better for Barbosa inside the distance, under 2.5. The under 2.5 is a better number. You can take the submission prop at like minus 125. I think that's the most likely way this thing happens. But why wouldn't you just encapsulate everything in the under 2.5? Instead of buying the 2.5 minutes, you're buying the KO equity. That's kind of how this thing pans out. I'm saying under. I like violence. I think it happens in round 1, quite frankly. Davy Grant and Daniel Santos, you guys. So Davy Grant is a guy that I've always told you guys, he's the butthole pucker fighter of the week. Every single time. There is never a fight that looks like it should go under but actually goes over more than when Davy Grant is involved. This guy is so tough. He's impossible to knock out. He just keeps on chugging his way forward. And because of that, he extends his fights in spots where you'd think other people would probably keel over. Well, that's Davy Grant for you. He's taking on Daniel Santos, another kid that's just made of absolute iron. I fully expect this kid to come out here, put his best foot forward, forward. He's going to march down Davy Grant. He's going to make Davy Grant uncomfortable, and hell, he might even mix in takedowns. He's going to make Davy Grant grapple. Now, if Daniel Santos is not ready for this level, if he's not completely locked in, he could get sparked by a guy like Davy Grant. Hell, he could get submitted by a guy like Davy Grant. We saw Davy submit Rafael Assunção with a wicked little submission in round 3 a couple of fights ago. But Davy is getting older. We saw him get dropped in his last fight. The aggression seems to be something that he didn't handle extremely well. This is a step up for Davy Grant from his last fight, and Father Time wins these battles more often than not. So the over at minus 200 here is something that I just can't get behind. I know that's how most Davy Grant fights go, but he usually gets a 2.5 at a pick'em, and then they end up greasing over. I think this is the one that finally breaks the bank and goes under. So I wouldn't mind a violent sprinkle on this one. I don't know if I'm actually going to get to putting my real hard-earned money on this one, but I would lean under, and getting that plus number is something intriguing to me. I want to talk to you for just a minute about Torrence Finny and Robert Valentine. What we've got is a 1.5 here. Not many 1.5s on this card, but the over 1.5 is minus 160. I kind of like that. Robert Valentine's UFC debut went extremely quickly, and he was very obviously injured in that fight. And Torrence Finny is a guy who likes to come out and push the grappling pace and maul people on the ground. He's very small. He's very undersized for this weight class. So if he's going to have grappling success, I actually think it's going to take him a lot of effort to be able to stay on top of and control a guy like Robert Valentine. I do believe Torrence Finny is going to control this fight. I just think he's going to control it rather than finishing it, and maybe later in the fight with ground and pound or a submission or something like that is where he'll find his way to a finish. But I actually think Torres is going to have to kind of hang on for dear life here, because Robert Valentine is extremely dangerous, especially on the feet. He's going to be a much larger man. He's going to have much better striking. He's going to have power on the feet. So Vinny's going to have to hit these takedowns. And we've seen that Robert Valentine will play jiu-jitsu and will scramble on the ground. I like the over 1.5 at minus 160. This fight might end up finishing, but I don't think it's going to happen in the first round for these guys. Now we're going to jump a little ahead on this one. The last fight I want to talk to you guys about is actually the co-main event. We've got Pat Sabatini and Joanderson Brito. This fight seems like a very violent fight to me. They do have a 1.5 on this one as well. The over 1.5 about minus 155 or so. The under 1.5 sitting at plus 120. Now, I don't know if this fight actually finishes in the first round, but with that kind of a number, you can probably buy the 2.5 or the fight doesn't go the distance and have it be a decently reasonable number for you. You might just want to plug your nose and take the violence on the 1.5 and get a plus number next to it, because I think Joanderson Brito has a very, very real and good chance to finish this fight early. We have seen that Pat Sabatini has absolutely zero durability. He's got no ability to defend his chin, and when he gets popped, this guy absolutely sees stars immediately. So I think Brito could win this fight by round 1 very, very clearly. However, on the flip side of this, we've seen Joanderson Brito give up very, very tough grappling positions to lesser grapplers than Pat Sabatini. If Pat gets his ground game going, I do think there's upside for a potential submission here, because Joanderson Brito is a muscle-bound monster, somebody who likes to explode and get out of things using raw force and raw power. That's the kind of guy that a guy like Pat Sabatini will finesse and submit later on once they get a little tired and once they slow down. So I like violence in this fight. I'm not sure I want the under 1.5, but I think I want the fight doesn't go the distance. That's the Total Takedown, everybody. Make sure you're checking out the prop show that's going to come out to you today as well. We'll see you tomorrow for the Undefeated Post Weigh-In show. Let's roll.